Water is an essential part of any farming operation. Here on Vancouver Island, farmers know that we have a lot of water in the winter and not enough in the summer. Over the years, many producers on Vancouver Island have installed water storage in order to deal with the seasonal variations in water supply.
So the quality of water at the depth, the cost of making a deeper well wouldn't wash.
With climate change, we are expecting this variability in water supply to be an even greater concern.
We're looking at 3 times more extremely hot days, and they have a technical definition for extremely hot days. I think it's the hottest day you would experience on average in a 10-year period, happening sort of 3 times more often looking forward, and that is hard to wrap your head around, but more of those things that we would consider to be very hot coming more often, more intensive. And increasing warm and dry drought summer conditions, of course, that goes along with the overall average temperature increase and the changes in precipitation, increased wildfire risk, increased frequency, intensity, magnitude of extreme rainfall events. So we do have this interesting thing going on with precipitation, which is why we see that overall uptick annually. More of it's coming in these very big events. That is definitely part of the projections. And then we have the accompanying changes in hydrology. So earlier peak flows in spring, lower flows in summer, a shift to more rain-driven stream flow patterns, which are less predictable, and an increase in rain-driven flood risk. And of course, a lot of this pertains to water management and drought. And you probably all already know this. What does that mean for agriculture? The decrease in summer and fall water supply, but also at the same time an increased need for irrigation and potentially water storage and all of the associated costs that can come along with whatever infrastructure is needed there. The possibility of a decrease in crop productivity and quality, reduction in forage and hay production, which then also causes increases in feed costs. And these are things that came directly out of the producers that attended our Cowichan workshops in terms of what the concerns were here. They're common across the province when we're talking about these kinds of changes, of course.
In March of 2015, the BC Agriculture and Food Climate Action Initiative and the Cowichan Valley Regional District Public Safety Division brought Cowichan producers together to discuss preparedness for extreme weather events. On-farm water storage was seen as an important element of adaptation and in some cases essential for mitigating the impacts of extreme events such as extended dry periods. To support local producers in adapting to a changing climate, the Climate Action Initiative and the Island Agricultural Show organized a water storage farm tour in February of 2016. This video captures some of the information shared in that event. It introduces the different types of water storage, the different water sources you can use, the regulations you may need to consider and licenses that might be required, information to help you understand if water storage is a good option for your farm, and further resources to guide your planning. There are many ways to differentiate between the types of water storage. For this video, we are going to talk about 3 ways of storing water on a farm: cistern or tank, dam on a watercourse, and a dugout. If you are considering building any of these, it is important to understand how they are different and what sort of rules you need to follow. The first type of storage is a tank or cistern. These do not hold a lot of water and will only work for very small operations that have very low water needs. They will not work for irrigating large areas or stock watering. People who use cisterns or tanks often harvest the water from their roofs. This is called rainwater harvesting. The small amount of water collected from a roof during the summer is not sufficient for most agricultural water needs. However, a tank or cistern can be a benefit if it is constantly being replenished from a water source. For example, 20,000 liters of storage in a cistern can help turn a small producing well, approximately 4 liters per minute, into a viable irrigation source for a small acreage using drip irrigation.
For our well, we have a 6-gallon-a-minute well. Now that is great for residential use, but it's not going to meet our flow rates and flow volumes that we need for irrigation. The water that we do collect off our living roofs, we store in 11,000 gallons of water storage tanks. 11,000 gallons isn't getting us anywheres.
Most of us are familiar with the idea of a dam. A dam holds back water. When we think of a dam, many of us think of a dam constructed within a watercourse. This form of water storage has the most potential regulatory concerns. If you are building a dam on a watercourse, you will be required to obtain a water license, and there's a good chance that the dam safety regulation will need to be followed. So there are certain rules that must be followed to protect you and your community. Whether or not the dam safety regulation applies depends on the height of the dam, the amount of water stored, and the downstream consequences if the dam was to fail.
Dam safety regulation has different caveats, and there's 4. 1 meter, 1 million cubic meters. It's 1 meter in height, 1 million cubic meters of storage. 2.5 and 30,000 cubic meters of storage. Or 7.5 meters high and any storage behind it. And then there's a 4th one, any facility that could have a consequence downstream. So dams can fail for a lot of different reasons. We can have a dam slide to a weak foundation, which would be on the downstream side of the dam. We can have a dam slide because you've drawn the water down very quickly and it'll slide and collapse. We can have a slide, we can dam it on the downstream, sorry, this was on the upstream. Number of different ways that the dam can fail. And that's just when the dam is not built properly and it has material that's not very sound and it gets saturated and it sloughs on you and your dam can fail.
Because of the challenges with placing a dam on a stream, many people store water using dugouts. A dugout is an excavation in the earth. You can divert water from a stream or pump water from a well into a dugout. You can also allow water to flow over land across your property into the dugout. All of the stops on the farm tour involve dugouts. The province of BC has released an excellent resource that provides most of the details that you need to know to construct and maintain a dugout.
So the recommended way of building a dugout are you have the seepage coming in from around the dugout filling it up, or that you're diverting water from a stream into it. What's not recommended, what they don't want to see, is that you build a dugout in a stream, dig a hole in the stream so the stream comes in and the stream goes out. They don't want to see that.
There are 2 main types of dugout construction: a cut and fill dugout with a berm, or a true dugout where a hole is excavated into the earth and the dugout is below grade. The first type of dugout is also called a cut and fill dugout and has a berm. These dugouts are created by digging into a slope and then building a wall on the side to hold back the water. As you can see, these dugouts have a wall which keeps water inside. This wall or embankment acts as a dam. If you are building this kind of dugout, you will need to consult the dam safety regulations. The second kind of dugout is called the true dugout. This type of dugout is constructed into the ground and does not have a berm holding back the water. The dam safety regulation does not apply to this sort of dugout. This type of dugout can still be constructed on a slope to help collect water, but it does not have a wall, which, if failed, would cause the water to rush out in the surrounding areas. For this sort of dugout, you can still pile the excavated earth to the side as long as the earth is not used to hold back water. If you are unsure if your dugout has a berm, or if you would like to avoid making a dugout that qualifies as a dam, contact your local dam safety officer for more information. If in doubt, a call to your dam safety officer can help ensure that you are doing your due diligence. It is important to think about the source of water for your water storage project. Depending on where the water comes from, you may need a water license for your water storage. There is one case where you do not need a water license. If all the water that you are storing is coming from the surface of your property or from your roofs and running into the pond, then you will not need a water license. However, if you are collecting water from a stream or from the ground, you will likely need 2 water licenses, one for the storage and one for the water. Anytime you take water from a stream or a spring, you need a water license. Many farmers already have water licenses on streams near their properties. If you don't have one, you will need to apply for a license. In many areas of Vancouver Island, it can be difficult to get a new license to take water out during the summer when the flows are low, so farmers may want to apply to remove water from the stream in the winter when the flows are high and store it in a dugout for use in the summer. If you are storing the water you diverted from a stream, you will need 2 water licenses, a water license for the diversion and a water license for the storage. If you are using water from a well to fill your dugout, then you will need a water license starting in 2016. In 2016, new regulations came into force, and these regulations make it so that groundwater, just like surface water, is regulated by the province. These changes to regulations will likely ultimately be beneficial for producers because they will ensure that in times of drought, water is protected for agriculture. Producers who want to fill a dugout with groundwater or who have wells on their property for farm operations such as stock watering, irrigation, or washing, should apply for a water license as soon as possible. If you have a well but only use it for domestic use inside of your home, then you do not need a license. If you do need a license, it is important to apply as soon as possible for 2 reasons. First, if an application is received on or before March 1st, 2017, the application fee is waived. Secondly, and more importantly, well owners should get a license early because water licenses operate under a system called first in time, first in right. This means that in times of drought, the water user who had a license or drilled their well with an earlier priority date gets priority and is allowed to keep using the water the longest. If you apply in the first 3 years on or before March 1st, 2019, and can prove that your well has been in use for many years, that will increase the security of your water access. Much like a surface water license, if you are diverting water from the ground and storing it in a dugout, you will need 2 water licenses, one for the diversion and one for the storage. Some producers already have dugouts that are naturally filling up from a combination of groundwater and overland flow, or they have constructed drainage ditches into their dugouts. If you store and then use the water, even if you get it from a variety of sources, you still need a license. If you are considering water storage, it is important to do some investigating to identify if it is a good option for your farm. To start, look at the amount of water that you need, the amount of land it will take to store it, and how much it will cost.
That is because in this area, the depth to the amount of water that we need it's not economical. It's not even in the it's not a possibility. If $60,000 pond, $200,000 well.
First, consider how much water you need. If you are storing water for irrigating, you will need to first calculate your annual irrigation requirements. How much water you need to irrigate each year depends on where you live in BC. In the Cowichan area, 12 inches is needed per year in an average year. This is called the depth of duty and can vary from 9 to 15 inches depending on the year. To figure out how much water you need, multiply the duty for your area by the area of your field.
So how big does it need to be, right? What's the total storage you have to have? Is it recharged? Remember today we looked at a couple that actually had a well that recharged them. Maybe there's a spring underneath it that recharges. In a sense, it's groundwater, kind of like a well. Some of them are only field capture from the winter snowmelt. Don't probably get a lot of that here, but I'm in the interior and you get lots of snowmelt in some places. Right? So how big does that storage need to be? Well, your irrigation duty, we talked about being around 12 inches or 1 foot, and that actually came up a couple times today in talks, a 1 acre foot thing. And then times, how big's your field? That's how much you're gonna have to store, right? So you go on, you do the measurement, it tells me it's that big. So there's a dugout here, so how big is that dugout if you're gonna irrigate that field, right? So the storage, again, just to quickly go through, it's gonna be your depth of water you need by your area. So we had 152 acres, right? And we have a duty of 12 inches or 1 foot. Do the math, and we have 152 acre feet. Remember today at all the talks, they talked about the storage in those ponds. The last one, she said around 20 acre feet. The earlier one today, the guy said he needed, what was it, about 40 acre feet he required, or 50 acre feet. So that number's been thrown around, right? So an acre foot is simply an acre of land with a depth of water 1 foot deep. That's what 1 acre foot is. Okay? So this farm's 152 acres. You need 152 acre feet. So let's just say that dugout, you're making it cost you money. Let's make it 10 feet deep, okay? Not uncommon. I've seen a lot of dugouts, put a lot of pumps in dugouts, and often they're not much deeper than 10 feet for a couple of reasons. Your pump itself, as you draw the dugout down, only has the ability to draw water so high. It can only draw it so far. So the deeper you have to go for water, the more your pump struggles. So often dugouts are around that 10 foot of usable water. Okay, so there's my pond. I did Google Earth. It's 0.8 acres. We needed 152 acre feet, right? So if I was to redraw that at 10 feet deep.
It is also important to consider how the amount of water you need varies throughout the year.
Here, scenario 1. We have a 5 acre vegetable farm supplied with a drip system. The well produces 5 gallons per minute. The annual water requirements for this farm is 5,000 cubic meters. you could go to that tool that I showed you and it would have come up with the same thing, because that's how I got the number. Assume the dugout is filled from runoff prior to the irrigation season, so we have a full dugout. The well supplying 2,700 cubic meters during the growing season, so we need to store about 2,700 cubic meters. So we know we have 2,700 cubic meters coming in. The size of the dugout in this case is that, 3 meters deep, 30 by 30 meters. Scenario 2, 5-acre grape farm with drip irrigation supplied from a well producing 10 gallons per minute. Our annual water requirements would be about 3,700 cubic meters. The well supplies 5,454 cubic meters over the 120-day growing season. We may not need a pond at all. And that was my question today about the farmer that had 50 gallons per minute and had that reservoir and was irrigating 14 acres, could almost get by directly from the well, providing the well supplied that water all through the growing season. So you really got to be careful about whether you really need the pond or not. You got to look at what your supply can supply. The pond is good, gives you some insurance, might be aesthetically pleasing for your farm, might give you some extra security when it gets really hot and dry. But in this particular case, the well is providing more water over the growing season that they really need. But here's the thing. We have to look at peak demand. If you look at irrigation season, the crop demand is 14 gallons per minute in this case with the drip system at the peak time of the year. 14 gallons per minute. It gets really hot in July and August. It's not so hot in May, not so hot in September. On average, the farm needs 7 gallons per minute. So you say, well, my well produces 10 gallons per minute. So that's above average, so it's good, but it's below the peak, which is bad. So therefore, you have to look at the peak time of the year, and you say, well, my annual water requirement, 3 acre feet, 3,700, the well supplies 5,454, but the peak demand for 1 month is 14 gallons per minute, what the well only supplies 10, so the dugout must supply 1 month of supply at 4 gallons per minute to get me to that peak when I need that peak. And so therefore our storage is quite small, it's only 700 cubic meters.
Finally, if you want to store water for stock watering, you will need much less water.
Let's say we're stock watering. I won't go through all the detail here. I'm going to pull out some examples. This is out of the BC Livestock Watering Guide. I think that's what it's called. And if you had beef cows, you had 100 cows, you need 12 gallons per day. So you need 1,200 gallons if it's beef cows. Dairy is one of our highest consumers because they milk. And then they also can take some of the wash water in that because you still have to clean things down, right? So we need 36 gallons a day for dairy cows. So 100 cows, 3,600 gallons. Poultry's a lot less. It's only 6.5 per 100 birds. So we're going to use an example for dairy cows. So let's say we wanted a pond for dairy, okay? No recharge. Let's do the math. 3,600 gallons a day, 365 days every other year, but this year's 366 I clued in because of the leap year. So you need about 1.3 million US gallons of water. That's a whack of water, right? It's only 4 acre feet. So go back to my farm. It's 40 acres, say it's a dairy. There's this 0.4 acre dugout. Well, if it's 10 feet deep, excuse me, if it's 10 feet deep, he's got his 4 acre feet, right? If it's shallower, if it's a 1 acre dugout, it'd be 4 feet deep. Sorry, I didn't do the math, but you know, to show you these things need to be big.
Once you know how much water you need, you should ask yourself if you have the land available for water storage, and if it is best to take this land out of production for water storage, or if you should consider other options. Once you know how much water you will need and where you would like to construct your storage, you can contact several contractors to obtain an estimate of the cost to create a water storage facility of the required size. Be sure to consider whether you need to pay for engineering if you are creating a dam. If you are interested in knowing more details about the construction design and maintenance of dams and dugouts, see Ted van der Gulik's presentation on dugout construction, design, and maintenance. And if you are interested in developing a dugout, the BC Dugout Manual is an excellent reference on how to design, construct, and maintain your dugout. Just be careful. This manual has not yet been updated to reflect the new regulations, which will require you to license your well, so be sure to call Front Counter BC to determine the steps you will need to take to license your water source. If you are interested in knowing more about very small systems and rainwater harvesting, you can see Gord Bard and Ken Nentwig's presentation on rainwater harvesting. Some local governments have developed extensive guidebooks for rainwater harvesting. These may be helpful if you are considering storing rainwater on your farm. Finally, if you are interested in knowing how to irrigate more effectively to save water and improve crop yields, you can find an irrigation schedule calculator and many other resources at www.irrigationbc.com. The Water Storage Farm Tour was part of a two-part event at the Islands Agricultural Show. On the day following the farm tour, the Climate Action Initiative and the Islands Agricultural Show hosted a panel workshop on water management. At this panel, 7 guest speakers provided information on how to manage water on your farm in order to deal with drier conditions. They highlighted local examples of innovative approaches to water management, including water storage options and pilot projects, such as the Keyline project underway on Vancouver Island. They also demonstrated other water management tools that can help optimize the use of water. To learn more about what was shared in these sessions, visit the Climate Action Initiative website. For many producers in the Cowichan area, water storage is helping them to deal with climate variability. It is likely to be a valuable tool in the future to help producers address drier conditions with our changing climate.